Okay, so here we've got a little section that I want to just address the beginners again as well, beyond the intro. And what I want to do is I want to just explain to you a few basics that you need to know about the guitar before you're going to get the most. We're dealing with some fairly complicated subject matter. I'm trying to make it as practical as possible and as easy as possible, but in order to get the most out of playing your guitar, you better know how to play some open guitar chords. And what I would suggest, this will become apparent as you move on, but what I would suggest you start with is the CAGED system. And what the CAGED system is a unique way of unlocking the fretboard for guitar players with 5 chord shapes. Okay? C, A, G, E, and D. Now you might think, oh, well, where's F and where's B? And we'll get to that, okay? They're related to the chord shapes that we've just talked about. So let's deal with those 5 chord shapes rather. So we've got our C here. Let me get a little bit closer so you can see what the fingering is. Oh, I just messed everything up over here. I'd like to say I edit this bit out, but I'm not that clever yet, so you have to bear with me as I bumble about. Okay, so for our C, let's give you a little angle here. So I think everybody should know a C chord, but if that helps out, so we've got our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the A string, our middle finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, and we skip a string so that G string is open, and then we've got our C note on the B string, which is on the 1st fret. And what we want to do is, when we strum this, we don't want to strum the very top note. That E is not part of our... It is part of the C chord, the E note, but when it's in the bass, it makes it sound a little bit sour. So I'll play it with the E in the bass to show you that sour flavor. It's upsetting, okay? So if we just play the bottom 5 strings, we get that kind of tonality. Now, if you do want to play all of the strings, I would say pop your pinky in here, because when you throw a G on the 3rd fret of the E string, now you strum all of the strings together, it sounds quite sweet. Still sounds like a C chord. It does have a G in the bass, but it doesn't overpower the flavor of the C. So I would suggest playing it without the pinky, just the bottom 5 notes, or pinky on, play them all 6, okay? So there's our C. Now our A. The A is kind of one of these chords that there's almost as many ways to play an A as there are guitar players. So here's what I would suggest that you play an A with, especially if you've got smaller fingers. This could work out quite well. So what I've done is it looks like I'm playing on different frets, but all of these fingers are on the same fret. And what I'm doing is I've got the D string on the 2nd fret. I'm going to tuck my index finger on the G string right behind it. Then I'm going to tuck that ring finger on the B string just underneath that. And then what we have is a little line. And we play, again, the bottom 5 strings because the E is not really involved in that tonality, although you can get away with it. So we play the bottom 5 strings, starting with our open A. Oops. And that's what you have to look for. You see that part of that finger just touched the next string, sort of made it not sound out. So you got to make sure, if you got bigger hands, you got to be extra careful. Now another way to play an A, some people cram their last 3 fingers in there. That's actually useful, and I'll get to that when we talked about moving the chords in the CAGED system. So same exact fret positioning and just using different fingers to do the same move. So I'll move that around so you can see the back. Ooh, see the back side of it somewhat. If my finger get out of the way, doesn't really help to see that, but just be aware that they're all on the 2nd fret. Then there's the flat finger A, and that sort of stops the last note. So if you can see me over here, I'm picking the the last string, but it doesn't really sound out if you play the A this way. If you angle your finger a bit and you got big hands, you can get away with fretting 3 notes with one finger, but again, that is reserved for the fat-handed freaks of the world. So we've got our C, we've got our A. What's next, of course, is our G. There's a few different ways to play the G position. This is one that you'll find often in books. And what we're doing is we've got our middle finger on the 3rd fret of the E string, our index finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, then leave everybody else alone, and then we've got our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the E string, so that'll sound like this. Another really nice way to throw a wrinkle into that is to fret the B and the E string at the 3rd fret on that G, and I think this sounds a sweeter chord. Not much difference. We've got da, 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 da. Tonality is not too much different, but I just think that's a fuller sounding chord. So we've got a G. So we've gone from C to A to G. Next we've got E. Now E is one of these chords everybody seems to learn straight off the bat. So if we take our index finger and put it on the 1st fret of the G string, then we've got our middle finger, we're going to put that on the 2nd fret of the A string, and then our ring finger, we're going to also put that on the 2nd fret of the D string now. So that's what it looks like from the top. That's what it'll look like from looking underneath. And that's where we strum all of these chords. Sorry, I was a little out of tune. We're close enough for jazz anyway. Okay, so there's our E. Next we've got our D chord. Now again, this is a chord that a lot of people learn straight off the bat. What I do first is I create the straight line here. Now there are a few different ways to play a D. You can play a D chord like that as well, and that has advantages, say for certain moves, it does make sense to play it, but for the most part, you'll see a D played like that. So it's index finger on the 2nd fret of the G string. Then we've got our middle finger on the 2nd fret of the E string, so the very bottom string. And then this guy forms the top of the triangle, our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. So it'll sound like... And if we strum the bottom 4 strings, so look over here, so we're not using these 2 top strings because that will sound awful like this. That's not what you want your D chord to sound like. You just want that. Okay? So we've got those basic chords. Okay? Next video I'm going to show you why we learn those chords, because basically we can move those chords. And I'll also show you that it's worth learning how to play these chords in a minor as well, okay? So next bit is the minor and the movable.